AfroComicCon 2021. Rewrite the future with us.
Hi, I'm Theo Hollingsworth, writer, producer, and actor based in Oakland, California. This year, I've had the tremendous opportunity to accept a position here at Pixar Animation Studios in Emeryville, California. I'm currently working as a department manager, managing the story department for an unannounced Pixar film. In my time here, I've gotten the opportunity to see firsthand Pixar's efforts to highlight more stories by creatives of color, and in particular, Black creatives. I've always been a fan of AfroComicCon, so when I started here, I wanted to find a way to shed some light into what the Black folks at Pixar are up to for the AfroComicCon audience. I was able to conduct a series of interviews with a few of my fellow Black employees here at Pixar, specifically for AfroComicCon. The first interview I conducted was with Michael Yates, the co-director of the up-and-coming Pixar animated series, Win or Lose. It was awesome getting to learn from Michael about what got him into the animation industry, what he's watching that keeps him inspired, and what kind of work he's up to these days. I hope you enjoy. I want to, kind of start things off, but just like, can you tell me a little bit about like your history before getting to Pixar, and like tell me a little bit about what you're up to these days?
Yeah, history. I guess I can start from the beginning. Grew up in Northwest Indiana, like right outside of Chicago, near Gary, that area. I moved around a lot there, so it's been like a couple different towns over there. And ever since I was a kid, I was just always drawing all the time. Drawing, watching cartoons, watching movies, playing video games. And I think it was something that I was constantly doing, and my mom was always kind of fostering it, like signing me up for painting classes and different classes along the way. And I want to say about middle school is when I started to get a little bit more serious into it. And I started off really drawing comics a lot. I would just do it like during class, in between class. I actually had a problem of like, I would start something like really ambitious and just never finish it. So I would always like come up with like this grand, I don't know, 3-book series or something. And then I would get like 5 pages in, and then I'm like, this is terrible, I got to redo it. And I was constantly just like redoing everything, or to the point where I never finished anything. And so I think all through middle school, I kind of felt like I wanted to do comics, but then my dad was like, no, you should do something that's going to actually make money. And so he was pushing me into like architecture. And so during middle school, we used to have like these architecture classes and engineering classes where we would like do CG modeling and stuff like that. And so I was doing like a bunch of like blueprints, but also like CAD designs and things like that, going from middle school into high school. And so I had done like maybe 3 years of that before I was like, actually, maybe I want to try animation, because it felt a little bit more stable than comics, and it kind of involved the computer stuff that I was really into at that time, as well as the drawing stuff. And so then that's when I started like researching different colleges on that, and found like a bunch of different colleges. And I think the hard part that I found going into my senior year was just how expensive art school is, which is something, I guess in high school, I just didn't realize it. I just thought like, you want to go to college and you get good grades in high school, you should just be able to go to college. And then I think that was like a big turning point of like, oh, wait, no, it doesn't really matter. It helps because you get scholarships, but then like a lot of the art schools are private schools, so they don't have a lot of help and grants or anything like that. So after high school, I ended up taking a year off and just focused on just like making my portfolio again as best as possible to get into different schools. And then that next time I ended up getting like a really big scholarship from the school that I went to, Ringling College of Art and Design. And then that helped me to go, which I think was, at the time, I was like pretty upset about it, because it felt like I wasn't going to be able to do what I wanted. And I kind of was down on myself a lot during like this 1 year. It felt like it was forever, but it was only like 1 year of like me in the basement, drawing, painting, studying Maya. But then once I actually got to college, I noticed I had a lot more energy and like commitment to like actually learning everything, because it was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to come back next year. I don't know if I'm gonna come back next year. And so I was constantly like, every year I'll make a new portfolio and try to get a job. And then luckily I made it all the way through. But during that process in school, I got a couple internships. The first one at Disney Animation in my second year, And so I went there, and that's when I really learned a lot about storyboarding in general. And that's just the part of the process where you're at the front end of the production and you're kind of helping to visualize the scripts as well as like part of the writing team. And I really kind of fell in love with that part of the process. So I went back to school the next year, and then that next summer, my junior year, I interned at Pixar for story as well. I just kind of kept learning from different studios and different techniques that each one kind of uses and different things that they find important. And it was just kind of like building that toolkit for me. So then after the Pixar internship, I went back to school, finished, graduated, and then that's when I went and worked for Dreamworks for about a year. And there I worked on, what did I work on there? Troll Hunters, the Netflix show. Worked on the first season of that, and then I did some stuff on like other movies, but mostly just gag stuff. It was like a training program where I just kind of like learning the ropes of everything, and that was also really helpful just to know like what the actual job is and like what the expectations of everything are. And then after about a year at DreamWorks, I got a call to come back up to Pixar. And so I made that jump and came up here, and I've worked on Cars 3 was my first film, and then Toy Story 4, and then Soul. And then now working on Pixar's first long form animated series for Disney Plus called Win or Lose. And yeah, so that's the quick of the journey.
Wow. Okay. So I have a couple of questions in there. You said Raglan School of Art and Design?
Ringling.
Ringland. Where is that located?
It's in Florida,
Okay.
Sarasota, Florida.
Okay. Got you. So you started in Indiana, then
I
you
went to
went to
Florida and then went to
Florida.
California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, okay. And because DreamWorks is in SoCal.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
It's in Glendale. Like DreamWorks and Disney are like a couple blocks away from each other. Like really close.
Okay. Got you. And so you decided for college, you took like the broad major of animation, and then was it like within that you realized that the phase of animation you're most interested in is storyboarding?
Yeah. My actual major was computer animation.
Okay.
And it was a good thing because it gave me the ability to kind of learn how to do everything from character design to modeling, animation, lighting shots. Um, and it kind of starts as artistic as you want it and can go as technical as you want it. So it was a lot of like learning that full range of everything. And I think around the end of my first year, beginning of the second year was when I kind of started leaning more towards story. And I just found like we would get like an assignment of like, all right, this is a a physicality kind of animation assignment where a character walks into a room, sits down, stands up, then leaves. And you could do whatever you want. And it was to teach us the mechanics of how to move a character, how to make the weight shifts to sit and stand up. And then I found I would always write like an entire backstory for the character and create a world for them. And that part of it was much more interesting than the actual animation part. And I think that kind of just kept happening to the point where I was like, oh, maybe I should be into story because that's kind of the part of the process where you get to flex those muscles most.
Got it. Got it. And I'm curious to hear more about like what you were doing outside of the internship and when you're at DreamWorks, because I was looking at your Instagram and I saw a lot of really cool. That is it Y Yates 05 at okay, cool. I was like, make sure I got the right Instagram here. But I noticed that you have on here like a plug for your graphic novel, Urban Legends. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about Urban Legends and maybe some other like projects that you're working on outside of these big studios.
Yeah, for sure. Urban Legends is a good one to start with. I think, like I mentioned earlier, in middle school, I was always into making comics. And so after I graduated, one of my teachers from school had this idea for a graphic novel that he was like trying to get off the ground, and ended up talking a little bit about it, and then ended up working on it together after a while. So I came in after the premise was already there, but kind of added my own self to the story a lot, and like a lot of the main characters and the family dynamics and everything. And then we ended up shopping it around and uh, got a publisher to buy it, and we ended up putting it out, I want to say in summer of 2019, which was really great. I got to go to Comic-Con and kind of do the booths and all the signing and everything. And so it's like a older, like 12, 11 to 13-year-old graphic novel. And it's just about like this group of teens who are investigating these different urban legends in New York. Yeah, and it was like a really fun process, just kind of getting back to what got me into drawing all along, and finally being able to do that has been a fun process. It was also like really difficult because I also had the day job at the time, and I remember there was like a lot of really late nights to try to get it done because it's a big one. It's like over 100 pages, and I think I did it in about 9 months, from when we signed the contract to when I had to finish it all, and so it was intense, but
Yeah,
definitely fun.
crazy. And were you solely the illustrator on that? Or were you also like a contributing like writer?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Like I said, when I came in, the premise was there, but we ended up reworking a lot of the characters because I guess with most projects that I do, I try to bring a little bit of myself to it. So like the main character was based a lot off of me and different things that I liked, as well as just like the friend group and everything. So it was a little bit of everything there.
Got it. So you're like very multifaceted because you're not only an artist, but you're a writer as well. Would you say that maybe during your like computer animation training, were you also getting formal training in writing, or is this all self-taught, like just kind of figure it out as you go?
It's interesting. I think to a degree, you learn a lot of story structure and that kind of stuff. And then during school and even after school, I was constantly reading about screenwriting in general. And I would do stuff on my own, like writing short films and things like that. But I don't know, I always had this thing that like, if you're a writer, you just know like right away. And it's like something you're constantly aware of, like since your childhood. And to me, I never really had that. Or so I thought. I think I was just kind of doing it with drawings the whole time. Like I said, like the ambitious comics that I was doing in middle school that I could never finish. It was all like me going through this really intense writing process, and just like my hand of drawing couldn't keep up with it. Um, and so I think I was doing a lot of that. And then once I actually started working the day job, I think I started to kind of train that muscle a little bit more, like just writing stuff on my own free time and like reading a lot about writing. But yeah, I don't know. It's still like a spot of like, I don't know how good I am at it. There's always like this sense of like uh I guess imposter syndrome when it comes to it. But then I'm like, I guess I am doing it from a day to day. So I don't know. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. And the other part, like I'm curious. So before I get to the next question, because I want to also ask about directing, like kind of similarly, because that just also feels like, especially in animation, another like muscle, separate from
Yeah.
writing and separate from drawing. But before I get there, I wanted to understand a little bit more about Win or Lose and what your role is in that long form series, and maybe how that differs from some of your previous experiences working in story.
I guess the biggest difference is just my role in general. Like one of the co-directors and co-writers of it. So there's a lot more of me in it than anything else I've worked in. And there's a lot more of just decision making on our end as a group, me and the co-writer, co-director Carrie Hobson. More so than in a feature where it's like you're, as a board artist, you're kind of offering up a lot of solutions, but it's always like someone else is picking and choosing what the choice is going to be. And now being on the other end of picking and choosing what the choices are going to be, it's an interesting experience. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. And so has it been on the job training, learning how to direct, or have they given you like like a mentor? Or are you like yeah,
Yeah.
what's that like?
Yeah, it's been great. It's like I think here and most big studios I've been at, there's a lot of like help along the way of just like you have mentors, you have people to talk to. You can always go talk to any of the other directors here if they have problems. Um, I have like my own group of friends that I always go to like talk out like, oh, this happened and trying to figure out like what the best action is for this. But a lot of it is just kind of on the job training, and a lot of it's just like I think one thing that I realized was like when it's your project, like you know it the best. So a lot of times it's also just trusting your own gut and like what the decision should be. Um, and I think also just trying to make it enjoyable for everyone working on it. I think I've worked on some shows where you kind of lose that because of the environment or because of like the way that it's run, where there's not a lot of back and forth, like in collaboration, I guess. Yeah,
Right.
there's a lot of like, this is a single vision and it's really hard to contribute. And I feel like sometimes things get lost that way. I think one thing that I did learn from the comic was just like when you're making a film or a series or something that involves a lot of different people, the benefit you have is that you have all those different people. And I think a good leader is always one who's able to use that and not like if I want to just make my own exact vision exactly how I wanted to do it, I could just go make a comic. And this hopefully is like the addition of everyone adding up to making something better that I couldn't do on my own.
Nice. Thank you. So I'm curious about your influences. I feel like you can learn a lot about like a director based on what they're watching. So I guess it's a two-part question. What inspired you to get into this industry when you were younger? And then what are you watching these days or excited about?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like whenever I'm asked this question, I just forget stuff, but I'll try to remember. I guess as a kid, I always loved anime. Was really into it. All different types of stuff. Trying to think, Miyazaki films, all the Ghibli stuff was great. Akira was a big influence on me. That was a really good one. Also Disney films, even Pixar films, I was really into. I think it was a lot of just like different things, but I think the one in terms of like shows, the stuff that I liked most was like the continual storyline kind of stuff, as opposed to like the Looney Tunes or anything like that. It just didn't quite keep my interest as much. Um, Always like that the anticipation of like what's gonna happen next, what's gonna happen next, which I think influenced me a lot in the work that I do now. What else did I like? A lot of films, like The Matrix was one of my favorite films as a kid.
Nice. Did you see the
uh,
trailer for the new one yet?
I did, yeah.
You
I'm
excited?
skeptical. We'll see. I'm gonna watch it. But yeah. Uh, and then trying to think. Now, is that the second part of the question? What I'm into now?
Yeah, what are you gonna do now?
There's a lot of stuff. I feel like I'm just like constantly watching something. Like whatever is popular at the time, I'll try to like check it out just to see like what people are doing because I feel like in film and especially in shows now with there being so many streaming services, like there's so much fun experimentation, like creative things that people are doing that just gets me really excited. Um, Trying to think of like specifics. Uh, Atlanta is one of my favorites. I'm constantly rewatching that show and just like I don't know, there's something about it where it's like this perfect blend of tone of like serious, but then funny, but then weird, surreal, and I
Yeah.
just love that one.
And it's interesting you said you like shows up like with a continuous storyline because I can never land Atlanta. Because I'll go into it like, oh, okay, what happened in the last
Yeah,
episode? Cool. And then I'll watch and be like, oh, this had nothing to do with the previous one. But then like 2 episodes later, they'll bring it back to that thread. So I kind of like the way
yeah,
some kind of like
yeah,
independent episodes where
for sure,
they still have like a through line throughout the series.
for sure. That's one of the ones where it's like it is usually not my cup of tea, but for some reason that one it's like just enough to where it like keeps you going and keeps you interested. And then I think it's also just like each episode is so creatively, like they just try like some really crazy stuff, and it's constantly just like keeps you leaning in and like wondering like what did happen from this episode to this episode, and you're trying to keep up, and it just keeps it interesting the whole time. I think any other shows. I don't know if you ever saw I May Destroy You, that HBO show,
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Michaela
yeah,
Cole.
yeah.
Yeah, that one was like really good as well. And just like, I don't know, like that kind of a show where it's like a limited amount of episodes where you're following one storyline and you're able to really dive deep into the character study more so than you could have filmed just because you have way more time to do it. I love that kind of stuff. And think of what else. Euphoria, you seen that one?
Yeah. Yeah.
That one's great as well. Just like the directing style, the writing, um, even the subject matter is like so challenging, where it's like feels like really over the top, but then also it feels relatable in a way of like this is what kids kind of go through. What else? Fleabag. Fleabag. That one's also really good.
Fleabag. I'm looking this up. What was in Fleabag
This
again?
British show. It's sort of like a rom-com, and it's just got like this. It follows this girl and has this style to it of like she talks to the camera,
Mhm.
and it's something you've seen before, but the way that she kind of takes it, it's like a way that you haven't quite seen before that works really, really well with the overall story. Um, I didn't think, I don't know, there's like so many.
What about comic book wise? Like, was there anything in particular that you were reading?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of, at that time, it was a lot of manga. A lot of the stuff that I was watching, I was also reading, or even stuff that didn't quite make it into shows. I was really into that because it would be like these really thick books that would keep my attention for a while. Like I remember just going, like I would buy one and then read it in a week and then go back and then like really want to get the next one. That I think now I've been a lot like into like really like indie comics specifically. And then those are kind of harder to find. It's just like something will grab my eye or like someone I know made something and I'm like, oh, let me buy that, let me read it. Um, More so stuff like that than the superhero stuff. There's this one French comic. There's a lot of French comics as well, like Last Man, which is really good. I mean, there's so many I can't think of all the names of them, but yeah, it was much more that kind of stuff. Of I guess I like the contained story that didn't go on forever, something that had like a finite beginning, middle, and end. But then also like the shorter things that felt more like almost films, where it's like this one little story and it's all in one book. Also like that kind of stuff. Um, Trying to remember her name. It's like there's this French duo, Carrasco, I think is how you pronounce their name, and they do a lot of like these. There's this one called like My Beautiful Darkness, which is just like these little fairy creatures in the woods or something, and it's just like that one's really good. Yeah, I have like a really big taste when it comes to comics in that sense.
Got it. Got it. Oh no, you gave me a lot to have to like go back and read now. I'm still like learning and really diving into anime right
Hmm.
now, but like understanding now like that there's like mangas and then the most popular mangas get turned into shows. It's like really cool to see what kind of emerges from that. That's kind of your way with manga, to see what indie
Yeah.
creators are doing, and I
Hmm.
love to see more of that adopted here in the States as well.
Yeah. I feel like that's happening a lot more too. A lot of the shows, if you look up where they come from, a lot of times I've noticed creators will make a comic first because it's like this really good sense of like what the property is, especially if it's like your first show or like an unknown idea. If you show like, oh, here's a comic, you can read it, and then you can see like the tone of it, the characters, is it funny, and kind of like how it's going to play as a show or even a film. And then a lot of times like studios will buy that as like the proof of concept for whatever you're pitching.
Right, right. And speaking of studios buying stuff and developing kind of like a proof of concept, do you have experience with regards to pitching ideas to studios? What kind of materials that you think are useful to get together?
Yeah. I think like right after school, I pitched a lot to different places around. Um, and I think now there's like a lot more things online. You can kind of look at like different pitch Bibles or pitch packets for different shows that you love. I can remember finding like the Stranger Things pitch packet online and then just like reading through that and seeing like this is how you like grab the audience when you're just like like I think you have to almost treat it like the pitch itself is a story that you're telling
Hmm.
to whoever you're pitching it to. And so like when you read that one, it's like, oh, I'm getting a sense of what this show is, even though a lot of the details by the time they actually made the show changed completely. Like I think for the Stranger Things, like the location changed, some of the character arcs changed, and I think that's usually a good thing. It means that like you're not so bent on like this vision that you can kind of see when something better emerges. Um, but yeah, I feel like looking at that kind of stuff helped a lot, and just thinking of it as uh, the pitch itself should be entertaining. It should like give you the feeling of watching the show when you're pitching it to someone, when you're telling someone about this story. It's like, oh, have you heard of the show? And then you start describing it, and they're like, oh no, but it sounds really cool. And then you're like, hasn't been made yet. I just came up with it. Do you want to buy it?
Do you consider yourself like a dynamic presenter? Like, are you the one
um,
that's like, but wait, there's more, like, or do you have like a producing partner that helps you out with those types of things? Like, what's your approach personally?
yeah, it doesn't come as naturally to me. So for me, it's like a lot of practice to where it's almost like I memorize the pitch to the point where like I know the emphasis of each word and like each thing to where I can become dynamic because I know the material so well. I think that's the way that I generally like to do it. Whereas I know other people who are like, I don't practice at all. It's just like you go in and you just feel it out. But like to me, I'm like, I can't do that. That's too scary. I feel like I'm gonna fumble it or mess it up. And I just want to know that whatever I'm saying works. Um, so I do a lot of practice, like pitching to different people multiple times, just like honing it in, like you would a story of any kind you're working on. Like you do a draft of it, you show some friends, you get notes back, and then you do it again, and just treating that like the same process.
Whenever you're like trying to get feedback, how do you go around like organizing who you want to show it to? Do you strictly work with like industry professionals, or is it like my girl at the time, like, yo, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's good to get a mix of both because I think sometimes with professionals, they're less, it's more just like whatever the notes are. You don't get a sense of like what's working, like what's actually resonating. Whereas when you show it to someone who has no involvement at all and like doesn't even care if they're into it, that means like you got something there. Or even if it's just a piece of it where it's like, oh, I love that piece, that you know, like, okay, hold on to that because that's resonating with people. So I think it's a mix of both. It's just like for me, it's always like timing of like, what do I need at the time? What kind of notes do I need? Is this like a big picture thing, or is it like smaller details, or is it overall like, is this resonating with my audience?
That
And so
makes sense.
yeah, I don't know if
Right,
I can
it sounds like a
necessarily.
job within itself. Like you can't just be like, hey, shoot out an email with your pitch deck and be like, what's your thoughts? Like you really kind of have to like either organize something so that you're talking one-on-one, or at least
Yeah,
have like a list of like questions so that you can kind of
yeah,
guide their feedback.
yeah. I always prefer, well, not always. A lot of times I prefer the one-on-one because you can get more honesty from a single person and they're not affected by everyone else around them. But sometimes like the big group is also good because then you're getting like what is sticking out to everyone. And then people will agree with people or disagree, and you can kind of know like what's working, what's not working that way. Um, One thing that I did do, like a lot of times these pitches were like uh, on my own time after hours, which is always hard to do. It's like always like this. constant fight of like you come home, you're tired, you don't want to work on something. So one thing I would start doing was like going to a friend and it's like, hey, I'm gonna show you a pitch in 2 weeks, okay? And they're like, okay. Like, fine, we'll do it. And then you have like this deadline just in place. And it's like, no matter what, no matter how far I am, I'm going to pitch it. So if I don't have it far enough along, then I'm going to be the one that's embarrassed about this. And then
Mm.
just something that keep you motivated as you're going. Um, and that helps sometimes. Sometimes you just end up pushing the deadline and then it's like, okay, didn't really help.
That might have been too aggressive of a deadline this time. That's funny. That's a good like tactic. I definitely got to try to use that because I don't like. My problem is I think sometimes I don't give myself deadlines and then there's like no sense of urgency. I'm just like moving like a couple of pieces of sand every day on a project, and I'm like, man, if I had some type of deadline, even if it was arbitrary, I could probably get things done quicker.
Yeah, for
So with
sure.
that said, in 2 weeks, I'm gonna give you a pitch.
Yeah, I'm down.
um, so we're kind of like, getting close to time here. I want to kind of like, wrap it up. Like, we didn't really like, this is AfroComicCon. So it's obviously like, we're really speaking to like a primarily like Black nerd audience here. Many of them are probably aspiring artists as well. And so I want to get like I want to get your perception like of the landscape now in animation. Like, do you feel like in this day and age, being a Black artist, trying to get into animation, do you feel like there's still a steep hill to climb? Do you think we finally made it to the mountaintop? Like, or even if it's like kind of a mix of both, like, are there still some kind of like pitfalls that you would maybe watch out
Yeah,
for?
yeah, it's a great question. Um, I remember when I started, there was like I said, I had been to like all these different studios, and each one there was like two Black people, and then they would always come and just like talk to me right away. And I think it was something that helped me a lot just to know like there's someone else there who's like invested in your success. And some of them are like still my friends today, where it's like we still constantly are talking back and forth of just like, how's it over there? How's it over there? Like even if we're not at the same studio anymore. But I think the benefit now is there's far more Black people than I've seen since I've started. It's like constantly more and more people are coming in. Um, and then even the projects, I think the stuff that's being greenlit now feels a lot more culturally specific and just stuff that I don't think would have been greenlit earlier. So I feel like that's always a positive thing. I think the downfall, there's still not enough. So I'm always constantly just trying to like get people interested in animation and like, hey, you should give it a try. Do you draw? You should just keep going, keep going. I think I think if you are interested, there's so many different jobs within the industry, even though it seems like from the outside, it's like you're either an animator or you're nothing. But looking at just like the studios in CG animation in the pipeline, there's like so many different departments, so many different roles. And I think just trying to spread the awareness of like, even if you don't draw, there's still jobs for you in animation. Even if you don't think you're that creative, there's still jobs for you in animation. And just trying to be as big of a mouthpiece to that as possible.
Nice. Okay. And then yeah, the last question I'm curious, like your like list. I know you probably won't remember everybody, but it's like who should we be on the lookout for inside of Pixar or outside of Pixar as far as like Black artists like on the come up outside of yourself, or even if it's just some like predominantly Black centered animation.
Yeah. Um, this is a question that if I leave off one person, it's gonna come back. All right. Afton Corbin works at Pixar. Just
Yup.
released her short film 20 something on Disney Plus. Check that out. Amazing. Um, Kemp Powers, who co-directed Soul, who's I think he's going back into live. He's doing a little bit of both. Yeah, I would say watch him. He's doing like really fun stuff. Everett Downing, who's over at Netflix now. producing a show series. He's been great. I've known him since Dreamworks, I think. Who else? Yeah, there's a lot more.
Yeah.
Right now.
So no shade to the people that did not get the immediate shout out. But I agree. There's definitely a lot of folks. And then, I mean, like, I'm really even excited about like Canvas.
Oh yeah, Frank Abney.
Yeah.
He's great. We worked together a bit. I actually worked on his short Canvas a little bit as well. And he's over at Netflix as well, working on a project there.
Exciting stuff. Well, cool, man. Like that pretty much that's our time. There's a million more questions. I legit want to kind of continue to connect with you, man. Like I think it's been really exciting for me to see yourself, Afton. I've been working with Paige Johnston a lot, or she's been connecting with me, which has really kind of helped me to fill a place here. And there's just so many, like, just everybody is really supportive of like what's going on, and like I'm seeing like outside of just Black artists, just like a change of tide.
For sure.
So like the diversity in this animation field. So kudos to you to be a part of forging a new frontier here. Your work on